Penelope Jackson. On February 13, 2021, Penelope Jackson stabbed her husband, David Jackson, to death in their Somerset home during an argument over a birthday steak dinner Penelope had prepared for David. The bubble and squeak was merely a side dish that David complained about, which Penelope cited as the final straw in his supposed ungratefulness. The dispute occurred during a Zoom birthday meal with their daughter, Isabel Potterton. What began as a trivial disagreement about serving the traditional British dish would end with a retired lieutenant colonel dead and his wife imprisoned for life. Penelope, 66, a retired accountant, and David, 78, a retired lieutenant colonel, had been married for 24 years. Their relationship was marked by tensions, and Penelope claimed years of mistreatment, including physical incidents and controlling behavior. During the Zoom call, when David dismissed her as pathetic, Penelope said she lost control. Penelope armed herself with a kitchen knife and went to David's bedroom. She stabbed him in the chest, aiming for his heart. While David called emergency services, she stabbed him twice more in the abdomen to ensure he would die. During the 18-minute call, she refused to help him and even mocked him. What made this attack particularly calculated? Penelope had written a confession note beforehand, indicating premeditation. She confessed immediately on the emergency call, stating, "I've stabbed my husband." When police arrived, she calmly stated she was compos mentis and handed herself over. Penelope claimed she acted after years of mistreatment, citing incidents including strangling, verbal aggression, and a 1998 knife incident. She described their life as both idyllic and toxic. However, prosecutors argued she simply wanted out of the marriage, but chose murder instead of separation. The trial at Bristol Crown Court saw Penelope plead guilty to manslaughter, but deny murder. She argued coercive control led to loss of control. Prosecutors used the emergency call recordings to demonstrate cold-blooded intent. On October 29, 2021, a jury convicted Penelope of murder by a 10-2 majority. She was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum 18-year term before parole eligibility. The judge noted her shocking callousness and complete lack of remorse. He stated, "Your actions had nothing to do with self-defense. I did not detect a shred of genuine remorse." Penelope testified, "I just thought, I cannot do this. It is not fair and I lost control." Her daughter Isabel provided a victim impact statement highlighting the enormous damage and irreparable loss caused by her mother's actions. Penelope appealed the conviction in 2021, arguing media coverage impeded her right to a fair trial. The Court of Appeal officially dismissed her bid to overturn the murder conviction in February 2024. Courts found the trial had been conducted fairly. The case attracted widespread attention due to the ordinary trigger, a dinner disagreement. From a dinner dispute, we turn to a shocking incident on a military base. Margaret E. Schaeff. On February 10, 2024, Margaret E. Schaeff shot her husband, Sergeant Greg Schaeff, in the face inside their Fort Riley, Kansas home while he held their 11-month-old daughter. Their 9-year-old daughter witnessed the shooting. What followed was a desperate attempt to flee that would fail when one of the youngsters called for help. Margaret, 31, and Greg, 35, lived on the Fort Riley military installation. Greg was a U.S. Army soldier scheduled for deployment to Poland. He had stayed home to care for Margaret and their newborn, who was in the NICU. The shooting occurred in their home with both of their daughters present. Margaret shot Greg in the face while he was holding their infant. The attack was sudden and gave him no chance to defend himself. What drove Margaret to this act? Margaret told investigators she suspected Greg of watching prohibited material and expressed intense hatred toward him. An audio recording captured her saying, "I hate you and hope you die." These statements revealed the depth of her anger toward Greg. After the shooting, Margaret left the military base with both children in Greg's truck. She had been drinking at the time of the incident. The 9-year-old daughter called her biological father, who immediately alerted police. Margaret then turned around and returned to the base. Military police and federal investigators took over the case since it occurred on federal property. Margaret faced federal murder charges. An 8-day federal jury trial took place in February 2025. Margaret's own 9-year-old daughter testified at trial about witnessing the shooting. The young witness provided crucial testimony about what happened that day. The trauma of seeing her stepfather shot and then being driven away by her mother left lasting psychological damage. On Valentine's Day, 2025, the jury convicted Margaret of second-degree murder. The verdict came after hearing evidence about the shooting and Margaret's statements. The jury rejected any justification for her actions. On September 26, 2025, Margaret was sentenced to 360 months in federal prison, approximately 30 years. U.S. Attorney Kate E. Brubaker stated, "Margaret Schaaf deserves to go to prison." The court heard brave testimony from Ms. Schaaf's own daughter. Greg's family and military colleagues mourned his loss. He was described as a dedicated soldier who served his country faithfully. His murder left behind 2 young daughters who would grow up without him. The daughter who witnessed the shooting will carry that trauma throughout her life. The case highlighted domestic tensions within military families. The stress of deployments, military life, and family separations can strain relationships. However, the court made clear these factors don't excuse taking a life, especially in front of young ones. The infant who was in Greg's arms at the time of the shooting was physically unharmed, but will grow up knowing the circumstances of their father's death. Psychological impact on both daughters is immeasurable. They lost their father and saw their mother become a convicted murderer. Federal prosecutors emphasized that Greg was a soldier who served his country and deserved protection even at home. The fact that the murder occurred on a military installation added federal jurisdiction and potentially lengthier sentences. Margaret's actions not only destroyed her family, but also violated the safety of a military community. The Fort Riley community rallied around the daughters left behind. Military families and support services provided assistance to ensure the young ones would be cared for. The tragic case reminded the military community that domestic situations require vigilance and intervention. From a military base, we turn to a nurse who attacked while her husband slept. Rebecca Searing. On February 12, 2022, Rebecca Searing stabbed her husband Paul Searing twice in the abdomen as he lay in bed shortly before 2:30 a.m. at their Harlow, Essex home. Rebecca, 52, a palliative care nurse, had been drinking that evening. She helped Paul, 57, upstairs after he returned from the pub, then fetched a kitchen knife and attacked him. Paul was likely asleep when Rebecca stabbed him, posing no threat. The attack was unprovoked in the immediate moment. Rebecca struck twice, both blows landing in his chest. The wounds were fatal. Rebecca immediately called emergency services, stating, "I've stabbed my husband twice. I think I've killed him." When responders arrived, they found a blood-stained knife at the scene. Rebecca admitted what she had done and was arrested. What led a healthcare professional to such an act? Rebecca described their relationship as complex, with regular domestic tensions. She suggested Paul had called her worthless and made disparaging comments. However, the judge found these claims provided no justification for murder. Rebecca later stated, "Tonight, I took my chance." This statement suggested she had been waiting for an opportunity to attack Paul. The premeditation contradicted any claim of acting in sudden passion or fear. The trial at Chelmsford Crown Court lasted 9 days in August 2022. Prosecutors presented evidence about the attack and Rebecca's statements. They argued Paul was defenseless while sleeping and posed no immediate danger requiring defensive action. Rebecca's profession as a palliative care nurse added another dimension to the case. She was trained to ease suffering and preserve life, yet she deliberately took her husband's life while he slept. The contradiction between her professional role and personal actions disturbed many observers. The jury convicted Rebecca of murder. They rejected her attempts to justify the stabbing based on marital difficulties. The evidence showed Paul was asleep, unable to defend himself. Judge Christopher Morgan sentenced Rebecca to life imprisonment with a minimum 17-year term before parole consideration. The judge noted the defendant's husband had presented no threat, and in all probability, he was asleep. Paul's sister, Karen Crocu, delivered a victim impact statement, saying, "She may have been a good nurse, but that doesn't make her a good person." The family expressed their grief over losing Paul in such a brutal manner. Rebecca remains imprisoned, serving her life sentence. The nurse who once cared for dying patients is now imprisoned for causing a death. Her actions destroyed her career, her freedom, and most importantly, her husband's life. The healthcare profession was shocked by one of their own committing such an act. Rebecca's employer reviewed their screening and support procedures for staff. The case raised questions about whether warning signs had been missed in her behavior or personal life. Paul's death left family and friends devastated. They described him as someone who didn't deserve to die in such a manner, attacked while defenseless in his own bed. The brutality of being stabbed while sleeping added to the horror of the crime. Rebecca's statement, "Tonight I took my chance," suggested she had been planning and waiting for the right moment. This contradicted her attempts to portray the stabbing as a reaction to immediate circumstances. The premeditated nature of her actions sealed her fate at trial. From England, we turn to Texas and a woman with a disturbing pattern across multiple marriages. Sarah Hartsfield. Sarah Hartsfield was convicted in October 2025 of murdering her fifth husband, Joseph Hartsfield, by poisoning him with insulin in January 2023. Joseph, 46, was hospitalized unresponsive on January 7th with crashing blood sugar and died January 15th from insulin toxicity. But Joseph's death was just the latest in a series of suspicious incidents surrounding Sarah's marriages. Sarah, 50, delayed calling emergency services for 1.5 hours while Joseph was in medical distress. She recorded him gasping for air rather than helping him. She also deleted phone data, including searches and text messages. Messages sent from Joseph's phone after his hospitalization granted Sarah access to his Apple legacy contact. How did investigators uncover the insulin poisoning? Medical staff became suspicious when Joseph presented with dangerously low blood sugar, despite not being someone who used insulin. Tests revealed insulin toxicity as the cause of his condition. Investigators began examining Sarah's background and discovered a deeply troubling pattern. Of Sarah's 5 marriages, Joseph Hartsfield was her only husband to die under questionable circumstances. In 2018, she shot fiancé David Bragg in what was ruled self-defense, though that case was later reopened. She was also linked to an alleged plot against an ex-husband's wife and a 2014 arson incident. Joseph had told his sister Jeannie that his 11-month marriage to Sarah was falling apart. He feared Sarah would harm him if he tried to leave. Prosecutors noted, "What a wild coincidence that no person can leave her without consequences." The 7-day trial in Chambers County, Texas, presented evidence about the insulin poisoning and Sarah's suspicious behavior. Doctors and nurses testified about Joseph's condition before his death. Medical experts explained how insulin poisoning works and how they identified it in Joseph's system. Investigators found insulin pens at the home that Sarah had not disclosed to authorities. Phone records revealed deleted searches and suspicious communications. The digital evidence combined with medical testimony built a compelling case. The defense argued magic is not real when discussing the evidence. They attempted to cast doubt on the insulin findings. However, the jury found the medical and circumstantial evidence overwhelming. After deliberating for just 1 hour, the jury convicted Sarah of first-degree murder. On October 9, 2025, she was sentenced to life in prison. Joseph's family expressed relief at the verdict. His sister Jeannie had warned him about Sarah, and his fears proved tragically accurate. The conviction brought some justice for Joseph and potentially for Sarah's other deceased spouses, whose deaths were never prosecuted. Investigators continue examining the deaths of Sarah's previous husbands. The pattern of suspicious deaths surrounding one woman suggests Joseph may not have been her first victim. Her life sentence ensures she can't harm another spouse. Sarah's behavior after Joseph's hospitalization was particularly damning. Recording him gasping rather than calling for help immediately showed a cold indifference to his suffering. Deleting phone data and sending messages from his phone to access accounts demonstrated calculated planning rather than grief. The jury actually reached a unanimous guilty verdict in just 15 minutes, which reflected how strong the evidence was against Sarah. Medical testimony about insulin poisoning combined with Sarah's suspicious actions left little doubt about her guilt. The quick verdict brought relief to Joseph's family, who had waited years for justice. From Texas, we turn to Missouri and a forbidden relationship that led to poisoning. Amy Murray. Amy Murray, a 47-year-old Missouri prison nurse, poisoned her husband, Joshua Murray, 37, with antifreeze in 2018, and then set their Iberia home on fire to conceal the crime. Joshua died in the blaze, but autopsy results revealed he had been poisoned before the fire started. The shocking motive: Amy wanted to pursue a relationship with an inmate at the facility where she worked. Amy left the house with their son and dogs just before the fire. The timing suggested she knew the fire was coming. When investigators examined the scene, they found evidence of accelerants used to start the blaze. The autopsy revealed Joshua had been poisoned with antifreeze before the fire consumed the home. This discovery transformed what appeared to be a tragic house fire into a murder investigation. The poison had already been working on Joshua's system when the fire started. What drove Amy to such extreme actions? Amy had been having a relationship with inmate Eugene Claypool, who was serving life for murder. As a prison nurse, Amy violated professional boundaries and regulations by becoming involved with an inmate. Recordings captured Amy saying Joshua was out of the picture and implying she wanted to marry Claypool. Amy told others, "I just wanted to be with him," when referring to her relationship with the inmate. She saw her husband as an obstacle to this forbidden relationship. Rather than seeking separation or handling the situation properly, she chose to eliminate Joshua. Investigators arrested Amy 3 months after the fire. Evidence included phone calls between Amy and Claypool that revealed their relationship. Fire investigators found evidence of accelerants used to start the blaze. Amy was charged in 2019 with murder, arson, and tampering with evidence. She initially maintained her innocence. As the evidence mounted, she eventually agreed to enter an Alford plea. Maintaining innocence while acknowledging prosecutors had enough evidence for conviction. In 2025, Amy pleaded to second-degree murder, arson, and tampering charges. She was sentenced to 12 years in prison, with sentences running concurrently. The plea deal allowed her to avoid a longer potential sentence from a murder conviction at trial. Joshua's aunt Sherry Thompson spoke about the loss, saying, "Josh was a good, faithful husband." The family expressed devastation that Amy had poisoned and burned Joshua to pursue a relationship with a convicted murderer. The case highlighted serious problems with staff-inmate relationships in correctional facilities. Amy's position as a nurse required maintaining professional boundaries. Her employer implemented additional safeguards after discovering her involvement with an inmate. Amy now serves her sentence as an inmate herself rather than a prison employee. The irony of her situation reflects the consequences of violating professional ethics and committing murder. She destroyed her family, career, and freedom for a relationship that could never have been legitimate. The prison where Amy worked implemented stricter policies about staff-inmate interactions after her case. Increased monitoring and training aimed to prevent similar situations. The case became a cautionary tale in correctional facilities across Missouri about maintaining professional boundaries. Joshua's son lost his father in a horrific manner orchestrated by his own mother. The young one will carry the knowledge of how his father died and who was responsible. The family continues to grieve not just Joshua's loss, but the betrayal by someone who should have protected him. The Alford plea allowed Amy to avoid admitting guilt while accepting punishment. This legal maneuver frustrated some who wanted a full admission of responsibility. However, it guaranteed her imprisonment without the uncertainty of a trial. From forbidden relationships, we turn to a case where a wife claimed she was fulfilling a final agreement. Ellen Gilland. On January 21, 2023, Ellen Gilland, 78, shot her terminally ill husband, Jerry Gilland, 77, in his hospital room at Advent Health Daytona Beach. The shooting was part of what Ellen claimed was a 3-week-old agreement between them. A pact made as Jerry's condition deteriorated. What followed was a tense 4-hour standoff that shocked hospital staff and patients. Jerry was suffering from terminal illness with failing organs and painful ulcers. Ellen claimed they had agreed to end both their lives together, rather than watch Jerry suffer. On that January morning, Ellen brought a weapon into Jerry's hospital room to carry out what she believed was their plan. Ellen shot Jerry as he lay in his hospital bed. She then pointed the weapon at hospital staff who rushed to help. Beyond pointing the weapon, Ellen actually discharged the gun at least once toward the ceiling or wall to keep staff at bay, which significantly escalated the charges from just the shooting of her husband to aggravated assault on healthcare workers. She also fired at police who responded to the scene. What happened during those tense hours? A 4-hour standoff ensued as police negotiators tried to convince Ellen to surrender. She explained the agreement with Jerry and said he had even directed where to point the weapon. Ellen said she couldn't go through with taking her own life after shooting Jerry. A psychiatrist later described the incident as a murder-suicide where she did not go through with the second part. Ellen's inability to complete the plan left her facing criminal charges instead of death. SWAT officers eventually used a flashbang device to distract Ellen and take her into custody safely. No one else was physically harmed during the standoff, though hospital staff and patients were traumatized by the incident. Ellen was charged with first-degree murder and assault charges for pointing the weapon at staff and police. However, prosecutors acknowledged the unique circumstances of Jerry's terminal condition and the claimed agreement. In December 2024, Ellen pleaded no contest to manslaughter and assault charges. The plea deal recognized the complexity of the situation. On February 28, 2025, she was sentenced to 366 days in prison, with credit for 42 days already served, plus 12 years of probation. As part of her sentence, Ellen was ordered to write apology letters to those affected by her actions. When asked by the judge if she had killed Jerry, Ellen responded simply, yes. Hospital nurse Hector Aponte, who was present during the incident, stated, "She needs to go to prison." The trauma inflicted on healthcare workers who witnessed the shooting and standoff was significant. The case sparked debate about end-of-life decisions and agreements between spouses. While some sympathized with Ellen's claimed desire to end Jerry's suffering, the law was clear that private agreements don't authorize taking another's life. Hospital security procedures were reviewed after the incident. Questions arose about how Ellen managed to bring a weapon into the facility. Enhanced screening measures were implemented to prevent similar situations. Ellen's relatively light sentence reflected judicial recognition of Jerry's terminal condition and the claimed agreement. However, it still held her accountable for taking a life without legal authority. The probation term ensures she remains supervised for years. The case differs significantly from others involving wives who killed husbands. Ellen's advanced age, Jerry's terminal illness, and the claimed mutual agreement created unique circumstances. Some viewed her as a devoted wife trying to honor what she believed was Jerry's wish. Others argued that no private agreement justifies ending another's life, regardless of circumstances. Florida law provides legal pathways for end-of-life decisions through medical directives and hospice care. Ellen's choice to shoot Jerry instead violated those legal frameworks. The hospital staff traumatized by witnessing the shooting and standoff received counseling services. The incident disrupted care for other patients and created fear in what should have been a healing environment. Ellen's apology letters were meant to acknowledge this harm to innocent bystanders. If you've made it this far and enjoy deep dives into the most shocking criminal cases, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell icon. From a hospital standoff in Florida, we turn to a case where eye drops became a murder weapon. Lana Clayton. On July 21, 2018, Steve Clayton died at his South Carolina home after Lana Clayton poisoned him with tetrahydrozoline from eye drops. Lana, 53, a VA nurse, put the eye drops into his water pitcher over a period of 3 days. She poisoned Steve, 64, over a 48-hour period starting July 19, 2018. Steve had been experiencing vertigo and relied on Lana for care during his illness. As a nurse, she had the medical knowledge to understand exactly how substances affect the body. She knew what the eye drops would do. She later stated, "I just wanted him to suffer, to just be miserable," when describing her motivation to investigators. Prosecutors argued financial gain was also a significant motive, as Lana stood to inherit Steve's considerable wealth. Steve had accumulated substantial assets during his life, making his death financially very beneficial to Lana. She would receive everything he owned. How did Lana's actions after Steve's death expose her guilt? After Steve collapsed from the poisoning, Lana refused to perform CPR despite being a trained medical professional with years of experience. Her refusal to help shocked responding emergency personnel. She immediately pushed for cremation before any thorough investigation could occur. She burned Steve's will in an attempt to conceal financial arrangements. She also discarded his phone to prevent investigators from finding communications. These actions demonstrated consciousness of guilt. Steve's suspicious family demanded toxicology testing, despite Lana's strong objections to any investigation. Their insistence proved crucial to solving the case. Tests revealed tetrahydrozoline in his system, a chemical found in eye drops that is highly toxic when ingested in large quantities. The chemical caused Steve's organs to progressively shut down over the 48-hour poisoning period. He suffered greatly as the poison worked through his system, exactly as Lana intended when she said she wanted him to be miserable. Lana was arrested and charged with murder based on the toxicology results and evidence of her actions. Rather than face trial where all evidence would be presented, she agreed to plead guilty to voluntary manslaughter and tampering with evidence. In January 2020, she was sentenced to 25 years in prison. During sentencing proceedings, Lana claimed, "I never thought it would kill him." She maintained she only wanted to make Steve uncomfortable, not end his life. The judge rejected this claim entirely. The amount of poison administered over 48 continuous hours, combined with her systematic attempts to destroy evidence and prevent any investigation, demonstrated absolutely clear intent to kill. Her nursing background and medical training made any claims of ignorance about the substance's lethality particularly unbelievable to the court. Steve's family spoke about the profound betrayal of trust. Steve had been vulnerable during his vertigo illness, relying completely on Lana for basic care and medication. She exploited that complete trust and dependence to systematically poison him in his own home while he was defenseless. Lana remains imprisoned, serving her 25-year sentence. The nurse who took an oath to do no harm used her extensive medical knowledge to poison her husband with a common household product available in any pharmacy. From eye drops in South Carolina, we turn to laboratory poison in New Jersey. Tianle Li. Tianle Li, 43, a chemist working at Bristol Myers Squibb, poisoned her husband, Xiaoye Wang, 39, with thallium stolen from her laboratory. Between 2010 and 2011, she systematically administered the deadly heavy metal through his meals and even into his IV while he was hospitalized fighting for his life. The poisoning occurred amid bitter divorce proceedings and an increasingly hostile custody battle over their son. While she poisoned his food, there was no evidence produced at trial that she poisoned his IV while at the hospital. The hospital staff suspected her because she was constantly at his bedside, but the poisoning that led to his death occurred at home before his admission. Xiaoye Wang fell increasingly ill throughout late 2010 and early 2011, with symptoms that baffled doctors. His health deteriorated progressively. On January 14, 2011, he was admitted to the hospital with severe, unexplained symptoms that medical staff couldn't immediately diagnose. Hospital tests revealed thallium levels off the charts in his system, far beyond anything medical staff had seen. The extreme toxicity levels shocked the entire medical team treating him. Xiaoye died on January 26, 2011, from thallium poisoning after suffering greatly. Tianle had access to thallium through her work at the pharmaceutical laboratory where she was employed. Thallium is a highly toxic heavy metal, once commonly used in rat poison, but now heavily restricted due to its extreme lethality. Her professional position gave her both access to the substance and extensive knowledge of how to use it effectively. What made this case particularly disturbing to investigators? Tianle continued poisoning Xiaoye, even while he was hospitalized and desperately fighting for his life under medical care. She allegedly added thallium directly to his IV drip while visiting him as his concerned wife, demonstrating extraordinary determination and coldness to ensure he would die. Tianle claimed fear of losing custody of their son during the contentious divorce proceedings motivated her desperate actions. She also alleged Xiaoye had mistreated her during their marriage, though these specific claims were heavily disputed in court and never substantiated. Hospital staff became deeply suspicious when Xiaoye's condition worsened, despite aggressive treatment and round-the-clock medical care. The discovery of extreme thallium levels prompted immediate notification of law enforcement and a criminal investigation. Authorities traced the poison directly to Tianle's workplace through detailed security records and laboratory inventories, A friend and former colleague later testified that Tianlei confessed while in jail, saying she had miscalculated the dose of poison. This confession suggested she had carefully planned to make Xiaoye sick rather than kill him outright. Though prosecutors successfully argued the massive amount administered could only result in death. In July 2013, Tianlei was convicted of first-degree murder and hindering apprehension. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Tianlei has filed multiple appeals over the years, consistently claiming witnesses lied about her confession and the evidence was insufficient. In 2021, appeals courts firmly upheld her conviction, finding the medical evidence, workplace access records, and testimony overwhelmingly compelling. Xiaoye's family mourned the loss of a man who died in excruciating pain. Thallium poisoning causes severe, agonizing symptoms before death. Their son lost both parents, his father to a painful death, and his mother to life imprisonment for causing it. Tianlei remains imprisoned, serving her life sentence without any possibility of parole. Her appeals continue to be systematically rejected as courts find the medical evidence, workplace access records, and confession testimony compelling and credible. From a chemist in New Jersey, we turn back to Texas and a deadly pattern. Omaima Nelson. On November 28, 1991, Omaima Nelson, 23, killed her husband Bill Nelson, 56, in their Costa Mesa, California home. She stabbed him with scissors, beat him with an iron, then dismembered his body in a gruesome manner. She decapitated him, boiled his head, fried his hands, and allegedly consumed some of the remains, though she later retracted cannibalism claims. Omaima was born in Cairo, Egypt in 1968, one of 16 offspring living in extreme poverty. She underwent female genital mutilation at age 6, a traumatic experience that affected her psychologically throughout her life. She immigrated to the United States in 1986 after marrying an American citizen, though that marriage ended in divorce. In America, she worked as a model and nanny while developing a history of theft and assault charges. She married Bill Nelson in October 1991, just weeks before killing him. Omaima claimed self-defense, stating Bill had physically harmed her on the night of the killing. She described the incident as a response to immediate danger. However, the extensive and methodical dismemberment afterward completely contradicted claims of acting purely in self-defense or panic. What psychiatric evidence was presented at trial? A psychiatrist testified that Omaima experienced a psychotic episode triggered by the alleged assault, combined with her severe childhood trauma. The history of genital mutilation at age 6 and extreme poverty created significant psychological vulnerabilities that the defense argued contributed directly to her extreme actions that night. On December 2, 1991, Omaima enlisted help disposing of Bill's remains, which led directly to her arrest. The person she asked for help immediately alerted authorities about the horrifying request and what Omaima had described doing to her husband. Police discovered partial remains, approximately 150 pounds of Bill's 230-pound body, scattered throughout the apartment. The apartment was extensively bloodied with body parts in various disturbing states, some cooked in pots on the stove, some fried in pans, some prepared for disposal. The crime scene shocked even experienced homicide investigators who had seen countless murder scenes. Prosecutors argued robbery was the true motive, pointing to items and money Omaima took from Bill after killing him. They dismissed her self-defense claims as a convenient justification constructed after the fact. In 1993, Omaima was convicted of second-degree murder rather than first-degree. The jury apparently accepted some mitigating factors existed, including her psychological history. she was sentenced to 27 years to life in prison. Omaima has been denied parole 4 times, in 2006, 2011, 2020, and 2023. The board continues to cite her lack of remorse and the predatory nature of the 1991 crime. Omaima Nelson was denied parole most recently in 2023. Her next parole suitability hearing is scheduled for June 2026. Omaima consistently denied cannibalism claims during parole hearings. Though initial reports and evidence strongly suggested otherwise, she remains at California Institution for Women serving her sentence. Bill's family has opposed Omaima's release at every parole hearing, describing the horror of learning what happened to their loved one. The extreme dismemberment and alleged cannibalism added grotesque dimensions to their grief that time cannot heal. From California dismemberment, we turn to conspiracy for insurance money. Monica Sementili. On January 23, 2017, renowned celebrity hairstylist Fabio Sementili was stabbed to death on the patio of his Woodland Hills home. His wife Monica Sementili had conspired with her lover Robert Baker to murder Fabio for a $1.6 million insurance payout. The case exposed an affair, elaborate planning, and ultimate betrayal. Fabio was a celebrity hairstylist who worked with Hollywood's elite and brought substantial wealth to the family. His success meant Monica enjoyed a luxurious lifestyle in their upscale Woodland Hills home, with access to the entertainment industry's inner circle. But Monica had been having a passionate affair with Robert Baker for a significant period before the murder. The relationship went beyond physical attraction. They discussed plans for a future together. Fabio's continued existence was the only obstacle preventing Monica from being with Baker and collecting the insurance money. On that January evening in 2017, Baker came to the Sementili home and stabbed Fabio multiple times on the patio in a vicious attack. Monica was home when it happened, part of the carefully orchestrated plan to make it appear like a random attack or robbery gone wrong. She provided Baker access to their home and helped stage the scene afterward. Forensic evidence completely contradicted their staging attempts and revealed the truth. Surveillance footage captured his black Porsche Cayenne near the Sementili home, and DNA evidence found inside the vehicle later linked him to the struggle with Fabio. Investigators found significant inconsistencies in Monica's account of that evening that raised immediate suspicions. What sealed Monica and Baker's conviction beyond doubt? Love notes exchanged between Monica and Baker while both were in jail awaiting trial proved absolutely devastating to their defense. Recordings of their jailhouse conversations revealed their continued passionate relationship and detailed discussions about the case with no remorse whatsoever, only concern about getting caught. Monica's sister Loretta testified at trial about Monica's complete betrayal of Fabio and the family. Family testimony painted a vivid picture of a marriage Monica desperately wanted to escape through murder rather than divorce. The trial examined in detail the $1.6 million insurance policy and how Monica stood to gain financially from Fabio's death. The financial motive combined with the illicit affair provided overwhelmingly clear reasons for conspiracy. In April 2025, Monica was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy after a lengthy trial in May 2024. In July 2024, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge found she was the mastermind who orchestrated every detail. Robert Baker was also convicted and sentenced to life without parole for carrying out the brutal stabbing. Both conspirators will die in prison for their crime. Fabio's family mourned the loss of a talented man whose wife plotted his death for money and passion. The hairstyling community in Los Angeles was deeply shocked by the murder of one of their most successful and beloved members. The jailhouse love letters symbolized Monica and Baker's complete lack of remorse. Even after arrest and during trial, they continued their relationship and showed no genuine regret for taking Fabio's life. From conspiracy in Los Angeles, we turn to a deadly wedding pact in Michigan. Kelly Cochran. Kelly Cochran made a pact with husband Jason on their wedding night in 2002. If either spouse cheated, they must kill the lover or face death themselves. This deadly agreement led to 2 confirmed murders. What seemed like dark humor became horrifyingly real. Kelly grew up next door to Jason Cochran in Hobart, Indiana, and they eventually married. The wedding night pact would haunt them for over a decade. In 2014, Kelly began an affair with Christopher Reagan, a 53-year-old co-worker at the job they both held. The affair violated the wedding night pact she and Jason had made 12 years earlier. Kelly invited Reagan to their Iron River, Michigan home where Jason was waiting with a .22 caliber rifle. Jason shot Reagan as soon as he entered, enforcing the deadly pact they had made on their wedding night. The couple then dismembered Reagan's body using a buzzsaw in their home. They dumped the remains in the woods near their home where they would remain undiscovered for months. They parked Reagan's car with a misleading note designed to throw off investigators and make it appear he had left voluntarily. But Kelly's killing didn't end with enforcing the pact against her lover. In February 2016, Kelly turned on Jason himself in an act of calculated revenge for forcing her to participate in Reagan's murder. Resentful over being forced to help kill Reagan and living with the psychological burden, she overdosed Jason with heroin and then smothered him to ensure his death. She carefully staged the entire scene to appear as an accidental overdose. Kelly moved to Kentucky shortly after Jason's death and began making cryptic statements about additional victims. Her brother alleged she claimed involvement in multiple killings over the years, though these remain unverified. How did detectives crack both murders? Detectives used unusual interrogation tactics to secure Kelly's eventual confession to both killings. They built rapport over extended time periods and allowed her to reveal details gradually rather than confronting her aggressively. The breakthrough occurred when Kelly voluntarily led investigators to a patch of woods to recover Christopher Reagan's skull as part of a failed attempt to negotiate a deal regarding the death of her husband, Jason. Evidence included blood splatter analysis throughout the home, a journal detailing events, and an empty burn barrel where remains were disposed. Kelly's stories shifted constantly as she tried desperately to portray herself as Jason's victim rather than an active participant. Kelly was convicted and sentenced to life in prison for Reagan's murder. She received an additional 65 years for Jason's murder. The consecutive sentences ensured she would never be released. Kelly's unsubstantiated claims about being a serial killer with up to 9 victims have never been proven despite extensive investigation. Her brother alleged she confessed to multiple killings over the years. Investigators found no evidence of additional victims despite extensive searches and interviews. Reagan's family finally received answers about what happened to their loved one, who had simply vanished without a trace. Jason's family struggled with the complex reality that Kelly had killed him in revenge for forcing her into the first murder, creating a tragic cycle of death. Kelly Cochran is serving her life sentence at the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility in Ypsilanti, Michigan. The wedding night pact that started as what seemed like a twisted joke between newlyweds led to 2 confirmed brutal deaths and destroyed multiple families forever. The case demonstrated how dangerous pacts and jealousy can lead to unthinkable outcomes when taken seriously. This was all from our side today. Thanks for watching. Click here to check out another video.